Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mass Timber March Madness. I'm pleased to have Stephanie Gripne here speaking about impact investing in mass timber. She's decided to take the questions as we go, so please enter them in the Q&A and in the chat, and I'll ask those. And welcome. Take it away, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me, Greg. And I just want to say, when I got a call last year from Steve Marshall, and he said a year and a half ago, and he's like, what have you been doing for the last 15 years? And for those of you who don't know, my PhD is actually in forestry, and I took a left-hand turn about 15 years ago and started doing innovative finance and impact investing. And so when the opportunity came up to re-engage the Forest Service, who I worked with off and on for over 10 years, 11 years, early on in my career as a wildland firefighter, wildlife biologist, economist, social scientist, and ecologist, I was super excited, and it's been more fun than I ever thought possible. Because when I used to do those small diameter timber sales stewardship contracts back in 2002, 2003, I didn't have the financial tools and the financial innovation that I now have. And we didn't have the advancement in not only mass timber, but mass timber, cross-laminated timber that we have today. So I feel like it couldn't be more exciting. And so I've had a blast this last year. For all of you who welcomed me back, or for new friends like Greg, I thank you for being so welcoming. So who am I? My name's Dr. Stephanie Gripne, and I was a business school professor at University of Colorado at the Leeds School of Business. I was director of sustainable real estate development in the University of Colorado Real Estate Center, and assistant professor in finance adjunct. And what was unique about that position for me is I've never actually taken a business school class, but I've done over 300 transactions, and just love moving money into good things. And when I was sitting here at University of Colorado, I was asking myself, why is it so difficult to raise capital? There's so many good projects, nonprofits, small businesses, startups, and funds that need debt or equity or revenue-based financing and full spectrum capital. And I finally came to the conclusion that my hypothesis for this was the people and institutions with the money, even though they're intelligent, they were aligned in terms of mission alignment, they had access to money, there was no place for them to go learn how to invest in what I would call social ventures, projects, nonprofits, small businesses, startups, and funds. And as I was testing out this hypothesis in 2010 to 12, I ended up becoming convinced that that was a big issue. We needed trustworthy investor education that was learning by doing. And so, and then I realized, oh my gosh, not only does University of Colorado need this curriculum, every entrepreneurship center needs this curriculum, every natural resource center in a university. And then it dawned on me that I had to create a business to business to consumer model, essentially a multi-university academic center that could provide this education curriculum to anybody. So I left University of Colorado in 2012 and launched Impact Finance Center. And our mission is to is the other side of an accelerator. So those of you who know 500 startups and Techstars, I think about them, and they identify, educate, and invest in the entrepreneur. We're the opposite. We identify, educate, and activate individuals and organizations who want to become impact investors and unlock what we call full spectrum catalytic capital. And then we also create community infrastructure that can be replicated, scaled, and customized. And a big part of this learning, we do this one-on-one, small groups or large groups for individuals and organizations with money. I'll walk you through a case study of Teresa Ish at the Walton Family Foundation. And when I think about the individuals and institutions with money, I think about baseball. And I might ask, like, what do the Minnesota Twins, St. Paul Saints, Wichita Wind Surge, and Cedar Rapids Kernels have in common? They're actually the farm team of the Twins. And essentially, if you look at people like Teresa at the Walton Family Foundation, she's in sustainable fisheries. She's in Major League, totally when it comes to intelligence. Major League when it comes to mission. Her mission is sustainable seafood and fisheries globally. Major League when it comes to access to money. She's the biggest grantor. She gives away, I believe, over $12 million a year. However, investing in a for-profit sustainable seafood company Her experience doing that, not major league, not even AAA. She's done it T-ball. She's never done it before. And yet every time we approach somebody and ask them to invest in our startup, our sustainable real estate, mass timber CLT, in a real estate investment, and they've never made an investment, we're essentially asking them to start swinging at 95-mile-an-hour fast pitches without them ever having gone through T-ball. So at Impact Finance Center, we provide that T-ball for the individuals and organizations with money. And they're so major league that in the case of Teresa, it only took her 5 of 10 sessions to get approved the first ever direct investment from the Walton Environment Program, Family Foundation Environment Program. And it was for a $500,000 negative 50% return investment to a for-profit sustainable seafood company. And internally, and why do I say negative 50% return investment? When's the last time somebody said, I have the best negative 50% return investment for you? What's exciting about this is we teach corporations that the financial return of a marketing dollar or an HR dollar or an R&D dollar or a corporate social responsibility dollar or a grant dollar in the case of Teresa, the financial return of that is negative 100% loss. So if you do a negative 50% return investment out of your negative 100% loss money, that's an above market rate return of 50%. You get half your money back on that situation. And really, Teresa had been building the market of sustainable. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from Teresa. She'd been building the market for sustainable fisheries for a long time. And she was getting for-profit companies to do things more impactful. And so they were essentially doing grant activities that nonprofits would do. And she was having nonprofits in this space becoming more financially self-sustaining with social enterprises. And she essentially had only 2 tools in the toolbox. She had a grant and a loan, and those are kind of blunt instruments. And as I like to say, we don't build a building with 2 tools. Why would we finance a mass timber CLT building with 2 tools? And so we basically said, she wanted to give grant money to the for-profits doing grant activities, but not their for-profit activities. And so that's where we said, okay, let's pitch this internally to the attorneys as a recoverable grant. Meaning, like, don't worry, we're not going to change the rules. We're going to do a grant, and there's a small chance some of the money will come back. Externally, we pitched this as a loan to the for-profit sustainable seafood company. It actually worked with the intermediary. We're going to talk about CDFIs in a minute. And that basically there were impact goals that if the for-profit did these impact goals, they could forgive up to 50% of the loan. And I believe it's this type of transaction that is going to really catapult mass timber CLT into what could be in the United States once we learn this full spectrum catalytic capital. And just to give you a case study, in 2012, I actually led a mass timber building renovation, and we used money from a donor advised fund at the Denver Foundation, money that was at negative 100% loss basis, and did a 1% loan. So the donor was able to get 101% return on their investment by taking philanthropic capital and doing a 1% loan. And that loan saved us $4.5 million in interest, and another allowed us to do a historic tax credit because it got us out of our public bond financing for another $1.5 million. So by using this full spectrum capital for mass timber CLT, we can give the investors 101% return plus a tax deduction and save $6 million on a building. Greg Kingsley and I were talking recently. He's like, if what you're saying is true, we can actually give a better financial return to the investors and build mass timber CLT buildings that sequester carbon. I said, that's exactly what we're saying. And so to that point, we have over 80 tools in the toolbox. And so people that are learning, have money, and they want to invest in the whole mass timber CLT supply chain, from whether you need money to grow the trees or cut the trees or retrain the workforce or finance the mills or the equipment in the mills or the production facilities or the real estate investments themselves. We have tools across an entire portfolio of money to help unlock that capital. And I'm so grateful because the Forest Service did call us. We're essentially building over several years a marketplace and actually organizing existing investors, activating new investors, and then helping them connect with the projects, nonprofits, and small businesses that need it. And so I think of this as our first year, is we're not even 1 year into it, is really our institute and our classes that we've been building. We create a farmers market for the social ventures to find the investors, which we call our investor club. And we have organized over 200 investors for the supply chain. And now we need to go find out what they want to invest in and help connect them to the investment opportunities, which we'll do through podcasts and interviews and case studies. And so that's kind of our focus right now, is stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. And there was a quote from 2012 that said, "It is as if the impact investors lined up around the proverbial water pump, waiting for the flood of deals when nobody wants to prime the pump." And that was from Omidyar and Paula Goldman and Matt Bannock. And we agree with that. What does that mean? It means if you're sitting here trying to finance your mill or come up with a startup in mass timber CLT, you probably still need some business planning help or some coaching on how to pitch. And that's not what we do. And we would love to connect you with CDFIs, nonprofit lenders that can help provide that wraparound small business coaching for you that you need to get going. And so we 100% agree with this quote. And we also say you need the additional quote of priming the pump for the projects, nonprofits, small businesses, startups, and funds to get ready for the money without priming the pump with the individuals, foundations, family offices, and corporations to invest in those social entrepreneurs will result in a field of dreams effect. If you build it, will it come? No, it won't come. So the next part of the presentation is a new presentation. It's just my reflection of being in the mass timber CLT space for the last 1 year, less than 1 year. And it's what, if I had a magic wand, these are the top 10 things I would supercharge going into this next year. And so we're going to go through this list slide by slide. You are welcome to interrupt me as we go through it. And we're going to walk through each one of these top 10 things. We start with investor clubs, then the institute, celebrate the investors and qualify what they're investing in, introduce you to CDFIs. We have to come together as a community to sell one another. We'll talk about that. How do we get the real estate investments supercharged and off the ground using small change, realty mogul, CDFIs, guaranteed revolving loan funds, equipment, a mass timber CLT fledged accelerator, a mass timber CLT community note, and a revolving loan guarantee fund. So I'm going to just check the questions really quick to see if we have any questions. I don't think we do. Fantastic. So investor clubs, what do I mean about investor clubs? If a governor calls me right now and says, or economic development team from a state calls me, I basically say there's really 3 big things you can do right now. And most people start by building a fund, which is down here from 1 or 2. And we actually say, you know what, if you can only do one thing, start by building a social venture marketplace. Online, in person, online during COVID, in person, outside of COVID, and actually go start cataloging who needs the capital, the projects, the nonprofits, small businesses, startups, and funds. And we've done 2 of those with the Forest Service in the last year, and we've now sourced over 60 investment opportunities. We're actually going to slightly expand the scope to include some biomass and biofuels and other good wood products on that. And that starts mapping the number of investments. What are the investments that need capital? Additionally, the Forest Service recently ran the Wood Innovation Grant Program that will also provide a catalog of what the need is. And then we say, that's like a farmer's market. And a fund is like a CSA box, a community supported agriculture. We just go buy a share of a farmer's crops. And most of us like that concept of being as close to the ground and supporting the farmer directly. But at the end of the day, for those of us who travel or are a little nervous about getting extra vegetables during a certain week, we tend to be more farmers market people. We don't want the share to arrive on our doorstep and have to deal with it. We'd rather go to the farmer's market on Sunday. And so we think that funds should only be developed when there's investor demand. And we say, but if you really are serious about growing investors, In states like Colorado, we have 158,000 millionaires. A state like California, over 1 million millionaires. Those are essentially seeds, serotinous cones from ponderosa pine cones that need some heat to be activated. And so we also are talking to several state governments about hosting investor workshops where we go identify and educate the individuals and organizations with money to activate them so they can become investors in the supply chain. Because right now, essentially the social ventures are going to a bare vegetable patch where there's all these embodied seeds that have not been planted yet. And so we need to go plant the seeds and activate those seeds, which are the investors. So that's our first recommendation, which we're doing. And in order to prime the pump, you actually have to teach the nonprofits how to receive capital, the startups to receive capital. You have to introduce CDFIs to the community. And so we do that through webinars in between the investor clubs. And so we actually have the Impact Investing Institute, and there's at least 7 recorded webinars here, from Impact Investing 101 to nonprofits and impact investing to impact investing giving circles. And if anybody wants a free super pass to watch any of these webinars, we'll share those webinars with folks. On the top 10 list, number 3 is once the investors are investing, if they're willing to be public, we need to celebrate them. Investors attract other investors, attract other social ventures. And so when we did this in place in Colorado, we activated 85 new investors. And so we're going to be rolling out our Everyday Heroes series with the Mass Timber CLT, and Chris Larson's going to be our first interview. And we're going to do this to, in part, help understand what the investors are looking for, because it's easier to find deal flow for an investor than it is to find money for the social venture. And so we'll be doing this through podcasts, blogs, and case studies. So if any of you are currently investing in Mass Timber CLT and you're willing to be on an investor panel for an investor club or do a podcast with us, we want to hear from you. We want to celebrate you. The second important number 4 on the top of my list is the introduction of CDFIs and nonprofit lenders. CDFIs stand for Community Development Financial Institutions, and they're essentially like the friendly banks if you get rejected from a bank. And I believe that the CDFIs can be, there's over 1,500 of them in the US, and I believe that they could be key to financing a lot of infrastructure in the mass timber CLT space, from equipment loans to mills to production facility loans to lines of credit to real estate investments. And how this works is a bunch of us would have to go raise investment capital from corporations, high net worth individuals, foundations, et cetera, to invest in these CDFIs. And then we would essentially create an equipment loan program, and that equipment loan program could be used nationally. And what's exciting is we just recently connected with RCAC, which is a CDFI, and they're regulated by the federal government. They're just not regulated by the FDIC. But RCAC is a member of the Partners for Rural Transformation. It's a national coalition of CDFIs and nonprofit organizations that are committed to providing this infrastructure and loans. So we're super excited about engaging PRT and helping basically create this financial infrastructure for the whole mass timber CLT supply chain. Number 5, nobody does this better as sell one another. What do I mean by that? As difficult as it is if you're raising capital, is to go to an investor and actually say, hey, investor, tell me what you're looking for. And that heart-wrenching moment when they say what they're looking for and you're like, oh, I might be able to have them bend and come over to me. But what they're really looking for is to invest in somebody like Greg Howe or Amelia at Whole Trees or something else like that. The best thing we can do as an organization is sell one another. So ask the question, and if it's not a good fit for you of what they're looking for, help them connect with your friend in this space. I can't say that enough. I mean, when getting ready for this presentation today, I thought, oh my gosh, have I tweeted enough? And have I Facebooked and LinkedIn enough to support what Greg's doing around the Mass Timber March Madness? If you haven't done that right now and you're watching this video, pull up whatever your social media forum is and go retweet and post what Greg is doing for this space. Leslie, Bobby, the Southeast Extension, several of us are kind of what we call backbone organizations in this space. And if anybody's doing good stuff, help promote them. If we do that, we'll help grow this industry so much faster. Number 6 is real estate. You know, when you ask people what the biggest need in the whole supply chain is, some will say mills, retraining workforce, and everyone does agree that real estate's a big issue. And so that's going to be a big focus this year, is helping get these real estate investments off the ground. And I'm really excited about lots of tools in that toolbox. Specifically, there's some really exciting crowdfunding platforms. One is called Small Change, and we'll actually tomorrow doing our Impact Real Estate Investor Club. We have a couple CLT mass timber real estate investments. AP Hurd's hopefully going to present. Place, Chris Velasco is hopefully going to present. So that's crossing over from our Sustainable Forestry Investor Club to our Impact Real Estate Investor Club. We have 150 tickets signed up for that. Hope you can join us. What's exciting about Small Changes platform is it allows for accredited and not accredited investors to invest. And so if we as a community can go build the mailing list of 50,000 accredited and non-accredited investors to invest in the mass timber CLT supply chain, then it will make it so much easier for any real estate developer to get the type of full spectrum capital they need to build the building cost effectively. And that will create demand and pull along that whole supply chain. When the financials work right, Realty Mogul, the upside about Realty Mogul, they don't allow accredited investors, but they do have 200,000 investors on their existing platform. They're more market rate, less full spectrum capital-ish, as I would call it. But they're a great actor, and if the building is a right good match, we want to definitely get people connected to Realty Mogul. And then I'm super bullish, and you're going to hear me talk about MC Social Capital in a few minutes as we're coming up. Number 7, I'm going to say equipment and bundle investments. And when I think about this, if you look at, we work with corporations both on investing in communities of color and also climate. And when I think about it, if you're Google has just did $175 million investment into people of color. Microsoft has a $100 million fund for climate. And we need to kind of start thinking and bundling up our investments, whether it's the equipment investments and the real estate investments, and kind of come together with an a la carte appetizer a menu where the larger investors can say, wait, if I have 20 million for this and 50 million for this, how do we actually sell them a whole set of products? Which is hard if you're sitting here and listening to this, you're like, but I just need money for my real estate project, or I just need this piece of equipment for my mill. We hear you, and we're going to do our best to help get you that capital. And we might be able to get you that capital faster if we bundle you up into a new financial product and work with the CDFIs and nonprofit lenders to make that happen. I also believe I'd like to see this year, and for those of you who want to participate, is also working with an accelerator. This is a Fledge called Fledge. I call it the Mass Timber and CLT Fledge Accelerator. Fledge is a group of accelerators. It's a global network of conscious company accelerators and investor funds. And what makes Fledge different from Techstars and 500 Startups and Y Combinator is Fledge uses full spectrum capital that is founder friendly, that helps out the founder. It doesn't dilute the founder. And so I would love to see whoever wants to work on this with us and grow this is like, let's stand up a Fledge Mass Timber CLT accelerator. What do I mean by full spectrum founder friendly capital? Well, in this accelerator, it's you get your investment capital on revenue-based financing at a 2.5x return. And when you pay back your revenue-based financing, you get your equity back. And so the founder doesn't get diluted, which is key to actually creating financially self-sustaining startups. So super excited about what Looney Libas is doing with Fledge and his conscious company accelerators around the world. And we think the time is right to have a mass timber CLT Investor Accelerator. The last two topics I'm going to bring up are, we have no immediate plans to do it, but I want to put it out there because I'd like to get the feasibility study going for this year. And one is like, let's go capture the money. And I think we need a product for low middle income people and a product for high net worth individuals and organizations. And so I want to introduce the concept of a community note, and we'll use the case study of TechSoup's community note. Right now, you can Google the word TechSoup DPO, direct public offering, and will come up, a web page will come up, and you'll learn that TechSoup is the largest civil society organization in the world. They last year they distributed close to $2 billion of software, interestingly enough, and hardware from the same 160 technology companies that are actually driving the demand for mass timber CLT. So these same technology companies donated last year $2 billion of hardware and software to TechSoup, a nonprofit, and they redistributed that $2 billion of software and hardware to 1 million nonprofits. There's 12 million nonprofits globally, and they want to go from serving 1 million nonprofits to 2 million nonprofits. So they've issued a community note, and I think we should create one for mass timber CLT. And for as little as $50, you can go and lend money to TechSoup. And they've raised $8.6 million of their $11.5 million goal. They have another about 9 months left in this campaign. And that $11.5 million of debt will help them expand from serving 1 million nonprofits to 2 million nonprofits. And I believe we could create a mass timber CLT note that would not only capture the money, but it would also create a public campaign where anybody could invest in mass timber CLT supply chains and say, I'm an investor in that building, I'm an investor in that mill, I'm an investor in that workforce training. And so it's both captures capital and it provides a really important narrative for this space. And then lastly, for the bigger money, I really am bullish on this concept of a guarantee revolving loan fund. What's a guarantee? Well, I think of a guarantee as when your parent co-signs for your house. They're like, okay, Junior can't afford to buy the house by themselves, and so the parent's going to co-sign it. That's essentially you're guaranteeing that you're going to do it. And guarantees are used for that same purpose for loans for a mill or a real estate building. However, MC Social Capital uses a guarantee in a very unique way. And what they do, they have hundreds of them, but I'm just going to use 100 guarantees. Let's pretend we worked with RCAC, the CDFI, and that helps support the rural West. And we said, let's create a guarantee revolving loan program. What would that mean? We would go find 100 individuals and institutions that had a net worth of $5 million or more. And we'd say, we're not looking for you to sell a stock or bond and give us money. We just want a 1 year, $1 million guarantee that you donate to the nonprofit for 1 year. So they donate that $1 million 1 year guarantee. We get 100 of them. And then we go to a bank and we say, hey, Beneficial State Bank, we'd like to borrow 50 cents on the dollar. So then we would have a $50 million revolving loan fund at 3% capital. I'm making up the interest rate. It could be 1, 2, 3, 4. We go lend that money out. Let's say it defaults $100,000 that year. We could either build in a first loss guarantee, so the foundations or philanthropists pay for that first loss, or we go back to the guarantors themselves, like they do at MC Social Capital. And they say, hey, we defaulted at 100,000 this year. Would each one of you do a $1,000 donation, and can we use your guarantee next year? I believe if we worked with several states, California, Colorado, et cetera, to actually build this guarantee model, that guarantee model could then, in partnership with the CDFIs and nonprofit lenders, supercharge the investments into the real estate, the mills, and the production facilities. And so in closing, those are my top 10 lists. And if you want to see more money growing, we need to grow more investors, and we need to educate them and activate them one-on-one, small groups, or in this case, large groups with an investor accelerator. Then we need to get them into the club. And the more investors we get into the club and the more social ventures we get, the more flow we'll see. And you can take these concepts we've actually piloted in case in Colorado and see how profound the investment capital injection can be. We've now actually trained about 40 donors, or no, about 70 donors for over $150,000. We've activated 82 investors for $300 million in Colorado. We stood up a Main Street character-based loan program. Also did a community note, and as a COVID response, did a guarantee model. And as you can see, we're at $400 to $500 million of investment. And so it's exciting. If we take this approach and keep working together and build out the system, we can grow the mass timber CLT marketplace so that we can easily invest in like this place investment in Portland for a CLT building for $7.5 million, or Amelia at Whole Trees, her startup with $3 million seed round. So with that, I'm going to stop and open it up for questions.
Yeah, Stephanie, I have a few questions to begin with. First of all, how does one keep up? You're doing so many things. You've got so many different initiatives going.
Oh, how do you keep up?
Yeah, for the people who are like, wow, she's got this different initiative, I want to participate. What do you recommend so people can follow you?
That's great. One is I'm going to put an email in the chat. Send us an email at info@impactfinance. Well, I'm going to put my email address back up there. That's what I'm going to even do. And so send me an email at stephanie@impactfinancecenter.org and say you want to join our mailing list and get access to our classes. That's going to be the fastest way to get up and going and connect with us.
And here's another, just a comment. That's why your work, I think, aligns so perfectly with the needs of the growing mass timber industry. Even when I talk to venture capitalists, often they don't want to invest in what they call capital intensive industries. They're looking for software style margins, hockey stick growth, and they want that to happen quickly. And I think that's really hard to find those margins in a lot of the mass timber industry, especially that quickly. So connecting people interested in impact and in, I would say, more common returns in real estate is filling a massive void. So it's really, what you're working is so complementary. Then I think a lot of the mass timber companies that I know or have presented on here, they're so busy keeping track with the changing mass timber industry. They don't have time to stay current on finance, real estate, crowdfunding, impact investing. So bringing those two worlds together should open up a lot of opportunities for the entrepreneurs.
You know, when Steve first came to me, he said, you know, how's it been? It's been 15 years. I said, it's good. How are you? And he's like, what have you been doing for 15 years? I'm like, well, I took a left-hand turn. I activate new investors, organize existing investors. And he told me what was happening in the mass timber CLT space. And he said, do you have investors for us? And I said, I have a couple. But I have bad news and good news. I only have a couple right now, but you can grow them like trees. And so if you want to go on a 5-year journey, and let's go identify, educate, and activate, you know, 1,000, 10,000, 50,000 accredited, not accredited investors, we'd love to go on that journey with you. And so I think that's the also difficult point, as you know, Greg, in watching this in Europe, it's like an iceberg, like trying to move an iceberg with flippers on. You're just paddling and paddling and paddling, and with you're flipping your feet as much as you can and seeming like you're going nowhere. And then all of a sudden you start getting traction. And so in reality, we all need to help one another. So if you might say, well, I don't know what she does. Well, how can you help us? If you know of a high net worth individual, a private foundation, a community foundation, a corporation, a family office, that's like, they're like, oh, well, we don't know how to invest directly into a supply chain. Have them contact us. Meanwhile, it's basically, we have to become the salespeople for all of us and going, Greg, how do I help you? Like, what do you need? You need us to promote your events? No problem. We'll do that. You need us to speak with you? No problem. You need us to help you get sponsorship dollars? Absolutely. How do we help each other be each other's best salespeople?
No, thanks. I think it's the definition of complementary, and you're doing that. You're constantly giving webinars and seminars, and generally they're freely available to educate people. And it's shared objective with what I'm doing. It's hard to keep track, but let's make that media available to anyone who's interested, and Absolutely. Just keep growing the community. there's the multiplier effect comes in. We've got a Lech Mazinski, one of our future speakers, says too in the comments, I like the idea of growing investors like trees. Very fitting image for our line of business.
They are. I love the ponderosa pine serotinous cone, right? You know, the cone, the pine, the seed isn't going to germinate and become a tree unless it has a little heat. And so that's what I think about is all these potential investors. There's tens of thousands, if not millions of investors that care about climate, care about forest health, care about fire, care about creating beautiful, safe, gorgeous buildings for us to live, work, and play in. And yet they don't know about mass timber CLT. And if they did, they don't know how to take their money and invest across all of their asset classes in the mass timber CLT asset classes. And that's our opportunity.
Can you tell, we've got a couple presentations tomorrow, 9 and at 10:30, but you also have an event with Eve Picker of Small Change. Could you share more info on that and just elaborate a bit on your work with Eve at Small Change?
Yeah, so that's I will put a link. Let me put the link into the chat for coming to that event. What's been interesting is we have, I should also give a shout out to also Owista Corporation, which is an indigenous CD5 we've been supporting. Here's the link for the impact real estate. We are setting up investor clubs, farmers markets for lots of different types of communities. And I'm going to share this up on the screen again. And this, one of them is impact real estate, which is a perfect, complement to what we're doing with the Sustainable Forestry Investor Club. And so if you go to our Mass Timber CLT Sustainable Forestry Investor Club here, you can see like there's a catalog of investments, which I'm going to, and that you'll need a password that you can email us and we'll give that to you. But you can see that as an example, let's see Place, which I just talked about, which is a nonprofit real estate investment. And they're trying to build a CLT tower in Portland, Oregon, as an example for affordable housing. Well, tomorrow they'll also be pitching on the Impact Real Estate Investor Club. And it's interesting to me that Investor Club, we put a lot less work into it and we have twice the attendees. So tomorrow, I believe we have 450 people signed up on a ticket. About 2,500 people have expressed interest in coming. And that's going to be our Impact Real Estate Investor Club. And what's exciting about the Impact Real Estate Investor Club and what Eve's doing at Small Change is, this will be high level explanation, but 100 years ago, Greg, you and me, let's say we lived in Portland together, we would be investing in one another. And then the stock market crash happened in 1929 and the securities laws were passed in 1933. And they said, okay, Greg and Stephanie, if you're not an accredited investor, which is a significant amount of money, you're no longer allowed to invest in a Main Street business or a real estate project. You can only invest in public companies. And so in 2012, a law was passed called the Jobs Act. And the Jobs Act basically said, oof, we might have overstepped. I mean, Greg and Stephanie, you can't invest all your money in Main Street, small businesses, startups, and funds, but we should allow you to invest a little bit. And so now there's rules that you can invest a couple $1,000s for non-accredited investors. But the problem is people like you and me are walking around Portland not realizing we're an investor and not realizing we can invest in that place, CLT investment. And so there's a movement that has to create. So what happened is we looked at the tea leaves and said, oof, the hardest thing is going to be to activate new investors and organize existing ones. So that's the lane we chose. Versus Eve said, when the federal government said, oh, you can invest now in Main Street, they said, but we're going to do a couple rules with you. You have to invest in fintech platforms that are registered with FINRA. And Eve is the community real estate crowdfunding platform that is registered with FINRA. So if you go on Small Change, which is super cool, you can invest for the developer gets to decide what the minimum is, but you can legally invest for as little as $100 or $1,000 into Small Change CLT investments. And so we actually have a Wood Innovation grant submitted to see, like, could we get 4 or 5 Mass Timber CLT investments listed on Small Change, and could we as a community help get those investments invested? And so This is an example. This is not a mass timber CLT, but this is Lanier's project that just got funded. He's buying shopping malls in Black neighborhoods of back east to build wealth with Black communities. So you could invest for as little as $1,000, and he was looking to give you 49% of the operating revenue on this. And I was trying to invest in this. My friend did. I didn't get there in time, but this is the opportunity that that you can imagine. I was like, Eve, could you put a mass timber CLT section here, and could we get a few buildings up, invest in this? So Eve is excellent at what she does. She's a real estate developer, designer, entrepreneur, just amazing human being. And I believe she's also speaking on your series this month.
Eve is speaking on March 25th.
Yes. So hopefully you can join us tomorrow. That would be fantastic, and get on the mailing list. And hopefully we as a community can get 2 or 3 buildings up this year and see if we can help get them invested. And that means, like Greg, we'd need your help, and we need you to ask your friend to help. And how do we get 10,000 people helping those mass timber CLT real estate buildings get invested in?
Yeah, I think if we have a couple case study projects, then the multiplier effect can come in.
Absolutely.
Lech Muzinski is my dream connection of complementary causes. Waiting for investors is utilization of small diameter logs extracted in fire prevention, restoration, forestry for laminations of CLT that then is used for medium-term relief housing in fire-ravaged areas. There's a proposal right there, and that's coming from Oregon, where they had all those horrible fires last year. That sounds like a kind of project that would look good for.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's the type of projects we're seeking, and we're trying to grow the investors to invest in those projects. So yes, if you are currently trying to raise investment capital for a project, a nonprofit, a small business, or startup or fund, please email us. I'm going to give you a different email, but you can email me personally, or you can email us at forestry@impactfinancecenter.org. And we would love to get you showcased on the Forest Service supported Sustainable Forestry Investor Club.
And here's another question, which confirms a lot of people are overwhelmed trying to keep up with everything. This one is from Frank Weeks. It says, as an architect who is passionate about the possibilities surrounding mass timber, I see financing as a critical piece of the solution. Unfortunately, 80% of the concepts you present are unfamiliar to me. What is the best way an architect with an eye to the future can effectively get up to speed in the sector and get more involved?
So that's a great question. And that's why we are recording all of our classes. And I put that link up on the email us. This is our Impact Investing Institute. You can email us at Forestry, and we'll give you a free pass to take those courses for free if that's what you need. And there's 5 or 6 of them up there. And then there's another 40 that we have recorded. So reach out to us and we'll help say, hey, go watch these 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 webinars and start getting comfortable with these terms. I mean, I would not have switched my career. My PhD was in forestry. I used to be on the other side of the equation, but the money wasn't flowing. And I've spent the last 15 years of my life doing a deep dive into finance and going, I'm essentially a restoration ecologist in the financial markets. I'm essentially dam busting and going, oh, there's dam here, there's riprap here. And what do we have to do to get the flow of capital going back to things that we all know that there's alignment for? People in Oregon care about this topic, and whether it's the issue of fire or forest health or green jobs or beautiful attainable real estate development, we know people care about this, but there's right now there's blockages that are keeping them from having your 401k going to where you want it to go. So we essentially, as a nonprofit, are working to remove the riprap and the dams to make that capital flow more easily.
Well, wow, it's again, I've watched a lot of your presentations. I too can't begin to keep up, but thanks for being such a good resource. What I'll do is also share this video on YouTube as kind of an introductory video, and then provide the links to Impact Finance Center and a couple of the resources you've outlined, so you can have even more people following up with you. Yeah, and I think that's probably what's happening with the questions too. People generally get overwhelmed. It's just a lot of great information coming all at once.
Well, thank you for inspiring me to take a step back and go, it's been a year almost. Like what's my recommendation? And I do want to go bold and be big. I mean, I feel like if we focus on a community note and a guarantee model and a Main Street character loan program, we can supercharge the investments in this in a pretty significant way.
Perfect. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you, audience, and follow up with Stephanie. And again, she's got that event tomorrow, and we have more presentations tomorrow, and then Eve coming up again on March 25th at 10:30 a.m. PST.
Well, and really quickly, Greg, I have two things. One really quickly, I'm going to put my LinkedIn for people to connect with LinkedIn on the chat, but let me ask you a question right back at you. Thank you for doing this. And what can we do to support you specifically for the, not only for the rest of the month as the presentations that you have, but going forward, what are the top 3 things that we in the community can do to support the amazing effort that you're doing?
Create that CLT marketplace. Essentially, when you're trying to get more deal flow, I think what would really excite people innovating or trying to start companies or do mass timber developments is there's a marketplace where they can get information out to people who would potentially be interested impact investors. I think what I can do to help create that and others can contribute to that, I think once people see that marketplace in place, that will attract more deal flow and get more attention. And then that can be linked for people who want mass timber information. There will be 30 video presentations I'll have at the end of this event, all of those great speakers. And then I think just connecting networks, not only in the US, but North America, and then bringing more international people in as well, just to share information about everything mass timber, impact investing in real estate.
Well, and I'll also put one of the magic one wishes that you could, how people can help us is we're in conversations with multiple state governments about them hosting the investor workshops, even if for free, we have to come train the investors, but having the state of California or the state of Colorado or the state of Oregon basically say, hey, we'd like to train family offices to invest in this supply chain. Hey, we'd like to train corporations, but having the hosts come from state governments, federal governments, et cetera, and do specifically investor training workshops to help them learn how they can activate their own existing portfolio with the values and mission that they already hold. So it's not, send us any contacts to individuals, corporations, foundations, family offices, but also if you have relationships in state, local government that are willing to host these investor workshops, that would be another way you can help support us to get the marketplace up and going.
And I think people are watching from different geographies. I know you're based originally in Colorado, but certainly here on the Pacific Northwest, I think we're going to have a lot of potential impact investors in Washington, Oregon, and California. And if we can get them aligned also with the tech industry as it grows more interested in impact investing, that marketplace can come in, then we could potentially win a lot more support. That's kind of the shared objective.
Well, and as you know, we work globally, Greg, and I cannot wait to jump the pond with you and get over to the other side of Europe too, and join those efforts between family offices and multinational companies. I mean, there's no question some of the biggest, fastest growing impact investors in the world right now are actually the corporations themselves. And so we need to work to, when they have capital, get them invested in our supply chain.
Perfect. Thanks for your time. I think we'll close, and I'll get this up on YouTube in the next couple of days. And good luck with your event tomorrow and your many other events. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Yeah, you're amazing. Thank you for all you do.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.